Welcome to part 3 of my video series on creating photography packages. In this video, we're actually getting into the nitty-gritty of building our photography packages. We talked about the importance of effective photography packaging, which was threefold: attracting clients to us, leading them to book, and making profits for our business. Then we talked about how to think about our clients' needs so that we can use those in building our packages. Now we're going to actually build those packages. But first, we need to figure out what our profits need to be. So it's time to talk about the numbers. In order to dive in, I want you to grab a few things and have them in front of you. The first one is your personal expenses, your living expenses, your monthly cost of living. That means what do you pay in rent or your mortgage? What's your food cost? What's your heating, lighting, electricity, trash? All of your living expenses on a monthly basis, how much do you spend? If you don't know that in your personal life, then it's going to be even harder when I ask the next question, which is gather all of your business expenses. What is your monthly cost of doing business? Meaning, what do you pay to maintain your website, your telephone, your camera gear, your studio rental space, all of the different things that you spend on a monthly basis on your business. Then we need to gather our cost of goods and services, meaning on a specific shoot, when you go on a shoot, how much does that cost? So if you're renting a studio or if you're renting camera gear, those would be costs. Or if you're delivering an album, or if you're shipping something to the client, those would be costs based on that photo shoot. So we have our living expenses, and from there we know how profitable our business needs to be. If you have another job, maybe your other job pays for your living expenses, but if you're looking to photography as a profession, then eventually you want your take-home income from photography to exceed your living expenses. So you have to know what your living expenses are so that you can know how much money you need to be able to pay yourself. And that'll be your profit margin that you need above and beyond your cost of doing business. So every dollar you make isn't going to go to paying your living expenses. Some of the dollars you make, maybe about half of the dollars you make, are going to go to paying your business expenses. It's going to go to paying your website bills and your accountant and anybody else that helps you function as a business owner. And then your cost of goods are going to be the more variable expense that the more work you do, the more your cost of goods are going to go up, but it's a fixed cost per photo shoot. So it only scales if you're making more money, you only spend more money on shipping, for example. And so that everything else we should try to keep fixed, or we should try to have a budget for how much we're going to spend on our living expenses, how much we're going to spend on our business expenses, and then the cost of goods is scalable, but those expenses being variable shouldn't matter because they only go up if we're making more money. The next thing you'll want to do is do a competitive analysis and see what other people in your industry, in your area, are charging. It's good to know what the competition is doing because you need to have competitive pricing. But just because one photographer can do a portrait session for $250 doesn't mean you can afford to, not if you want to build a sustainable business. So you're going to look at the competitive analysis, but then you also need to look at real numbers to see what you can actually afford to charge. So now you're going to add together your living expenses because that's going to be the income that you want to pay yourself. And you might even add like a little bonus on that. Like, yeah, my living expenses are $4,000 a month, but I'd really like to bring home $6,000. And so maybe you're going to use that number. I would suggest using the lower number to start as you're setting your packages. I know I need to at least make this much. And so then you'll determine what you want your take-home income to be. Then you're going to add that desired take-home income to your cost of doing business, which is going to include any advertising, health insurance, contract, accounting, equipment, maintenance, computers, insurance, licenses, permits, fees, rentals, office supplies, software, phone, internet, websites, taxes, retirement contributions, any expenses that you have, any business expenses combined with your desired take-home income is the amount of money you need to make. And so now we have to figure out, how are we going to make that much money? So if you have one income source, say you are just a wedding photographer, you'll take that number, let's just say it's 100,000. Say your take-home income is 50K and your business expenses is 50K. For easy numbers, you need to make 100,000. In order to do that, say you can shoot 20 weddings a year based on the length of your wedding season in the state that you live in. You need to make $5,000 per wedding. But that doesn't include the cost of shooting the wedding, which might mean a wedding album. It might mean driving to and from the location. It might mean renting any gear that you need. It might mean shipping things to your client or any client gifts that you have. So you'll add up that. Say it's another $700. That means you need to average $5,700 shooting 20 weddings in order to make 100K to keep your business sustained at 50K and your take-home income at 50K. And so you could do the same thing with, if you're a portrait photographer and you average $1,000 per portrait session and you need to make that same 100,000, then you know you need to do 100 portrait sessions at an average of 1,000. If you have more than one income stream, say you shoot some portraits and some weddings, then you can make a little bit more complicated equation where you're going to get 50K from weddings and 50K from portraits and 50K from commercial work and 50K from headshots, or whatever your breakdown looks like. You're going to figure out where you're going to get income and how much income you need from each of those categories. Then my personal philosophy is that needs to be your average. That needs to be your middle package, or maybe even your smallest package if you have a limited amount of days that you can work. So with wedding photography in Colorado, where I live, the wedding season is really from June to September. Sometimes we get May and October, sometimes we get some winter weddings, but there's a limited number of weekends that we can shoot weddings. So in order to keep our average at a certain level, we have to make sure that we don't go below it. So we have a package minimum. But otherwise, depending on how your packages roll out, that might be your middle package. I want my middle package to be $1,000 for a portrait session, but I'm going to offer a mini session for $500, and I'm going to offer a $3,000 full experience session or something like that, knowing that the average, statistically, most of your clients will book your middle package. So that's where we talk about the pricing psychology. We've all heard this idea that you should have 3 packages because most people will end up booking the middle package. And there's a lot of data to support that. But additionally to the data that supports that, as like how we can increase our profits by having those 3 packages, it's also a matter of how we can serve a wider range of clients. So if this is our main package we want to book, we're going to set up our pricing structure to try to get most people to book that package. But having staggered price points allows us to serve some clients with lower budget by having a lower package option. And it also allows us to serve luxury clients. We never know what somebody's willing to spend unless we give them the opportunity to. If we don't have a luxury package, a higher end package, we might be leaving money on the table because somebody might be wanting to get more and spend more, and we're not giving them the opportunity. So the package structure is about the psychology of getting somebody to spend more money, but it's also about broadening our ability to serve more clients. So this is where being a business owner gets fun. Say you had a goal of booking 25 of whatever kind of job, but then you end up booking 35. Minus your cost of goods for those individual shoots. If your cost of doing business remains fixed and your cost of living, take-home income remains fixed, then you have extra money, more profit margin, which you can then allocate more to take home, more take-home income so that you can go on more vacations. Or you could allocate some of the money to growing your business, spend more on marketing, upgrade your gear, whatever it is. So this is where being self-employed gets really exciting, because instead of being limited to this is how much money you make every year, this is how much money you make every year because you have to, and because that's how we set up our packages and that's how we set up our pricing. But if you want to work harder, there's no limits to how much you can make, because you can just book more work, and the majority of that money is going to go to your profits. That makes being self-employed less scary and more exciting. Because sometimes being self-employed is scary. You don't know how much money you're going to make. You don't know how many clients you're going to book. You don't know where they're going to come from. But once you have some numbers and some averages, and if you're conservative on your estimates, then year after year, you can increase your profits. That's why my advice is to set your rates based on what you can realistically charge in your target market and what you need in order to pay all of your expenses, including paying yourself an actual income so that you can pay your living expenses, but to also have bigger package price points and add-ons to your packages, or print sales and album sales after you've done the work, or to even book more clients. That is all additional profits. So once you have your living expenses, you have your business expenses, you have your cost of goods, you can figure out some goals that you want to set based on how many shoots you need to book and at what price. And then you can set your packages to meet at least that goal, but then it never hurts to shoot past that and make more money than you thought you could. So when it comes to actually building your packages, your strategy might be to make that middle package your average minimum that you need for a shoot, or it might be to make your small package that average minimum. And then more likely than not, you're going to use a 3-tier package system based on all the research and based on the fact that it allows you to reach a wider clientele. Then you're going to have incentives for somebody to book bigger packages. So usually the bigger the package, the bigger the discount, or the bigger the value. So if you spend a certain amount of money, you get more with that money. So for example, I would rather shoot one 12-hour event where I make all that money in one day from one client, even if it was a little less money, than 2 separate 6-hour events where I have to work 2 separate shoots and do twice as much work. So something like adding more hours doesn't cost us anything other than time, but we get more from one client. Or something like add-ons with the work you've already done. So you already have the photos. Now what products can you sell or include in the packages? Or how can you upgrade the image licensing for your commercial clients and have them pay more for photos that you already shot? Thinking about ways to scale how much money you can make from one client will increase your profitability. Then instead of having to find 1,000 clients a year, you only need 20 good clients. Something to that effect. Another strategy is to have good add-ons after the fact. So even though I said that I'm a proponent for making sure I give everything my clients need to them in the initial package, that doesn't mean I don't sell more things after the fact if they want it by giving them the opportunity. So with wedding clients, for example, you send them an online gallery using gallery software like PicTime, and they have these swanky little ways where you can just like automatically send a client a coupon code where suddenly they're ordering prints. That wasn't part of what you originally planned or thought you needed to make, but now it's additional sales on top. Or our albums start with a certain number of spreads, and if a client wants more spreads, they can add on to that. And not every client will, but when some of them do, it's extra money above and beyond, increasing your overall average. In order for your packages to be attractive, they need to be full of things that the clients need and not a bunch of fluff. Nobody wants to spend more money for things that they don't actually need. So your bigger packages have to actually provide more value, and you'll get creative on how you can do that. So in the beginning, when you're just starting out, your profits or your take-home income might not be as high as you want them to be because you're trying to build momentum and get new clients and build a portfolio. But eventually you need to be honest with yourself about where you are in business, because you can't build a profitable business if you're not charging enough money. And by charging enough money, I mean realistically looking at the actual numbers of how much it costs you to do things. I can't tell you how many business owners that I know that don't know how much profit they're making on a given job or how much profit their business is making in a given year. Those are numbers that it's important to know so that you can know how healthy your business is. And then you can always adjust your pricing. You can always notice, hey, I'm not booking that much, I'm going to lower my pricing. Or, hey, I'm booking a lot of my highest packages. Maybe I should shift everything so that I have a bigger package. In my mind, the biggest package should be like the dream, what I wish that somebody would pay, that I don't actually know if it's realistic. And I can't tell you how many times I've created a package that I thought nobody would ever book, and then it gets booked. And then I make more money than I thought I could make because I didn't limit myself. And so having that bigger package then encourages you to shift your profits and charge, or to shift your package price points and to charge more. And again, the bigger package is more value for your client too. So it's not like we're just trying to get more money from our clients. We want them to be excited about paying us more money because in that big package, they're getting a bigger deal. They're getting more hours or more photos or more products. They're getting more for their money than they would at a lower price point. It's just like any other sales strategy, right? Everybody wants to get the discount, but sometimes you have to spend more money to get the discount. So I don't know what type of photography you do, but I've done a little bit of everything. I'm primarily a wedding photographer and an adventure photographer, meaning we do outdoor lifestyle and commercial work and some nonprofit work. But I've also done portraits and headshots and some real estate. And so I've toyed with pricing for all of these different categories. So I'd like to share a little bit about what they have in common and what they have different, specifically when it comes to building packages that serve your clients. So if you're an event photographer, say you do weddings or elopements or corporate events or birthdays or bat mitzvahs or something like that, often what clients are looking for is a certain number of hours of coverage. And so that might be like the big price point difference in your packages, is a 6-hour package versus an 8-hour package versus a 12-hour package or something like that. Because event photography is more about having a photographer there to cover the duration of the event. And then from there, they'll need a final product. And for like a wedding, it might be wall art or an album. Whereas for a corporate event, they might just want digital photos in an online gallery, but they might want some image licensing so that they can use the photos for marketing. Then when it comes to portrait photography, most portrait photography, there's not going to be a huge difference in time because it's hard to convince somebody that they need a 3-hour portrait session versus a 1-hour portrait session. There are a lot of photographers that do like a mini session, which might be like a 30-minute session versus a 1.5-hour portrait session or something like that. Or there's photographers that do day in the life portrait sessions. But really when it comes to portrait sessions, whether it's pet photography, newborn photography, senior photography, family portrait photography, all of those types of portrait photographies, the session's probably going to be in the ballpark of an hour long. And so the variation in your packaging is going to come more from the final product. How many images do they get? Maybe they can get 5 edited images, or maybe they can get 100 edited images, or maybe they can get an album or wall art or something else that you know that your client needs. When you're building your packages for portrait photography, you're going to think about how you can add value to their package without adding fluff. So for me, building portrait photography packages is harder because it's a harder sell to tell somebody they need a bunch of stuff when all they really want is the session and the digital files. And so that's where you have to get creative and say, how can I add more value to their session? Maybe you can charge more for a sunset portrait session, or maybe you can charge more for like a more experiential portrait session. Or maybe you have other portrait photographers that work for you and then you charge more for you specifically being there. And so it depends on which photographer you get is which package you get. So that's where it's important to get creative. Then when it comes to commercial photography, say you're doing product photography or real estate or some lifestyle photo shoot for a brand, what those clients need might be a duration of the shoot, but more than likely it's going to come down to the image licensing. Are you giving them non-exclusive web use for 1 year? Or are you giving them exclusive, perpetual, unlimited usage? And so the image licensing is the value to a commercial client because that client is using your photos for their marketing. And the more marketing value the image has for them, the more you can get better image licensing terms. So knowing what type of client you have and knowing what they want in that industry is really important. That's why it helps to get to know the industry, get to know the clients, and then get to know yourself and what you provide different than somebody else. For example, Mark and I are a husband and wife team, both in weddings and in commercial work, and we can shoot photo and video. And for a lot of our clients, that's a big plus to have one team doing photo and video to get a very cohesive final product where the photo and video work together rather than clashing a little bit. Finding ways to serve your clients with what skills you have, and then using those when you build your packages. So that's how to create profitable photography packages. In the next video, if you're a wedding photographer, stay tuned because we'll dive into wedding photography packages specifically. And even if you're not a wedding photographer, you might find some of these concepts applicable.